Enemy designs are underrated in video games. There's a big difference between fighting generic enemy number 437 or badass, stylized, unique enemy designs. Sonic Frontiers kills it with their style in this game, boasting some of the most beautiful designs for their guardians and bosses. Today, I'm gonna rank what I think were the best enemy designs in the game, not only based on looks, but how fun they are to fight as well. I'll also put a spoiler warnings over the bosses just in case. First on the list we got Tank. He has an okay enough design, a little plain, but with a name like Tank you think, oh shit, he's gonna be a tough guy to beat, this should be fun. But then he chucks you both into the air and suddenly you're scrapping with only one move in your entire arsenal. Once you beat him up a bit, he falls where you can finally get your actual licks in and the battle's over. Next we got Asura, more like Basura. You get it, fellas? Asura is this big mushroom with hands and legs, and oh my gosh, he actually looks incredibly sick. You fight him in the first island too, and so when you see him, it's like, oh shit, Sonic Frontiers, baby, they ain't playing around. But then you realize fighting him is kind of a janky hassle. The first phase is fine, but when these bitch-ass lasers come in and, it becomes a mess. The hitboxes for them are so weird, you don't really know when you're actually getting hit, it just kinda happens. And then you get booted off his head and you try to cling on the weird wall physics and scrap your way back up, only to get cheesed again. Even once you get the hang of it, it's not very fun overall. His design definitely gets kind of annoying. Next we got Spider. I want to preface with the fact I love spider themed designed enemies. How are these guys not the most badass fellas you can face? The spider design looks really good in Sonic Frontiers, and the fight starts out dope where you gotta, aim for its legs. But then he launches you in the air and it becomes one of those gimmicky fights, and I'm good, dog. Let's move on. When I saw the name Caterpillar come up and I saw his design, I thought, oh shit, this is gonna fuck, isn't it? Like that one Mario Odyssey boss? But then I realized he doesn't actually fight, it's a rail grinding gimmick that actually is decently fun. But it's just compared to what could have been, I get sad thinking about it. Insect designs are one of those fire ones you can go for with enemies, and I just feel like we could have something cooler. Next we got Strider, same idea as a Caterpillar, where it's a grind rail design, but bigger. Big enemies are badass, and while this one wasn't too menacing, at least it wasn't tedious. Next we got Tower and Friends. Red Pillar, Excavator, and Silver Hammer all have neat designs. That's the best way I can put it. I guess a moving tower doesn't really strike me as particularly menacing or interesting. What really gives it its value is fighting it. This is the first enemy on the list where you actually throw hands as opposed to some gimmick, and I appreciate that. They're not too easy to face either, since while the head is the weakness, it isn't always easy getting to it. Solid enough enemy overall. Next we got Ninja and his older siblings. Kunoichi, Shinobi, and Master Ninja all got the same designs but get increasingly more menacing and tough. I think their humanoid designs look sick, but honestly their threat level is kinda mid. You'd think they put up more of a fight, but I guess Sonic is just too fucking busted and makes the fight too easy. At least you can be kinda toxic towards them. Giganto is the first boss we got on this list. If this were a name tier list, I promise you he'd be all the way at the bottom. Also keep in mind, I'm ranking the bosses a little more strictly than the Guardians since they get more focus in the game. The fight starts off with Basura vibes and getting up to him. Kinda frustrating, but we get to it and bam, our first supersonic fight. The music and feeling of power are off the charts here. Since this was the first boss, I was kind of a scrub and I didn't know how to parry yet, so basically it was just me going up to him, punching him, and getting sent back. The excitement kind of died when I realized just how repetitive it was, and the fact I beat him on the first try too just made it that much more underwhelming. Kind of a bad start for the bosses overall. His design is neat, but compared to the other bosses, it's definitely the weakest one, and so for that reason, he isn't too high on the list. Sumo has one of the most creative fights out of all the enemies. I love this little trajectory gimmick you got, because you can really be creative with your angles. Until you keep missing and say f it and start aiming for them directly. Not too crazy of a design, he's just a big fella with excavating arms, but he's solidly designed nonetheless. Now fellas, we have the enemy that inspired me to make this video in the first place. The shark is one of the cleanest designs I've seen in a minute. Oh my gosh, a desert roaming metal shark? Come on y'all, step your game up. He just looks beautiful. That one moment where he flies in the air is just mwah. Now don't get me wrong, he's not threatening at all in terms of gameplay, and his fight is incredibly simple as all you're doing is playing Dance Dance Revolution at 0.00001 times speed. But him existing at all is a great service and carries hard in the ranking. The fact Supreme starts out with a fucking gun is hilarious. But then he grows wings and wins the most improved superlative. But then he whips out the gun one more time and he wins again. His first phase is pretty simple and straightforward, and honestly so is his second one, except you have an ocean of yellow prisms flying at you. In hindsight, I was probably supposed to shoot the cannons firing at them, but you can really get away with scrapping here. Being the final Titan you have to fight is a big deal though, and he was incredibly easy to beat. Nothing too special, and so isn't too high on the list. Having a massive fighter robot jet thing that has a similar-ish name to Fortnite solidified this bad boy in a top 5 enemy designs. It's definitely the Guardian that has the best rail grind mechanic, since instead of going in circles, you're using them to chase. Of course, once you finally get to the beat 'em up phase, he goes down pretty easy, but the chase itself works really well. You have the risk of falling at any given moment, and while it does start the race over again, I definitely don't mind it since it feels like it's my fault. He is a wise Guardian that teaches you the prudent lesson to not fuck up. The Knight is the third boss you face. You don't really know how he looks like until you get to the fight itself, and man does he deliver. The whole sword and shield aspect is great, but when you add the 4-legged little pizza table design, it makes it perfect. His fight is pretty fun too. Getting the final emerald is painless, and I like the gimmick where you get to ride on his shield to use it against them. Not very difficult, but it is fun. Music does a great job here as well. Also, the fact Supersonic uses a fucking sword to split him in half is baller as hell. The Wyvern is easily the best designed boss in the game, and in my opinion, the best one gameplay wise as well. Firstly, we just need to be clear that this dragon centipede design mix is just insanely fire. When you first start the battle, you gotta get his attention at the top of the tower. I may have gone up the wrong tower. But then when we initiate the right one, we get a fantastic chase sequence that takes inspiration from the squid enemy design. The battle itself is great, music as always hits perfectly, and parrying the rockets while proceeding to beat his ass feels very satisfying. Definitely the most memorable one for me as well. In the first Island of Frontiers, I remember seeing this big tentacle enemy flying around and I was like, whoa, what that? When all of a sudden he pops up at you, inviting you to chase him on his back. This for me was one of the coolest experiences with an enemy ever. In no game would this work as well as it does in Sonic games. It looks like he was designed for Sonic to f*** him up. The fact you gotta chase him through these loop-de-loops and dodge the lasers it's shooting at you works so well. The ground you run on is f***ing beautiful and has awesome tension to falling off while not being clunky or hard to work with. The enemy design itself looks phenomenal. Squids are so cool, and to have a flying robot squid is too much of a good idea. Overall, easily one of my favorites in the game. They nailed this guy design-wise and gameplay-wise. And here we have what I think is the best designed enemy in the entire game, Ghost. First of all, its look is freaky as hell. The veiny octopus-like design matches its allure perfectly. The fact it sources its power from the pillars here is a nice touch. However, its look isn't what makes it number one. The obstacle course to get from one pillar to the other while also having rings getting sapped from you as you run is genius. This one actually applies so much tension with a good mix of skill. It's definitely the most fun enemy in the game to fight since it utilizes so much about what makes Sonic fun, speed and maneuvering. A lot of the ways to defeat enemies feels a bit mindless or stale on this list since you just mash the attack buttons, but this one requires you to run and race against the clock, which Sonic is designed for. Another big issue with some of the enemies on this list is that the first time you fight them, they're cool, but afterwards it gets a bit stale. For Ghost, I was glued to my screen while fighting him the first time, the second, the fifth, easily number one on the list. And that's it, fellas. Hope you enjoyed the list. Unfortunately, I didn't get to fight the secret final boss that you only get by playing the game in hard mode, but since it's not really Sonic, I'm not losing sleep over it. Thanks for watching, y'all. Catch ya later. See ya!